what you're about to see is perhaps just a tad bit different in that TA and I are going to be sharing the mic during this set. We'll be reading, if you're mathematically inclined, we're going to be reading about 8 poems, so you can keep count. We're going to pause for just a minute in between a couple of the poems and talk a little bit about the poems, and about TA's process in recording the audiobook version of Mudda I am so pleased that he's been able to join us this evening. Let me just briefly introduce TA. He is a very, very active producer of all sorts of plays, books, and the like. He's co-authored a play called Attitude of Gratitude. He has worked for the Recovery Communication Project. He's edited poet novelist Felix Alexander's current work in progress, a novel called Broken Souls. He's assisted the startup company, budding health and wellness company called Inyanga Garden, and on and on. He's zooming in this evening from New Mexico to join us. And I think you'll see here in just a moment why I am so, so pleased to have him here, he and his voice here with us this evening. So I'm going to share a screen and we're going to take a little bit of a trip here. So Mudda, as Joan was saying, was published late last year from Atmosphere Press. And the poems that we're going to be presenting are from Mudda. This first poem, Radio, was first published in a journal called Hedge Apple. And it's all about hearing a tune that takes you back several years to events that were pretty important. Radio. That was so long ago that it's hard to even pinch. Since then, whole hills have turned the other way. And most babies from such time have left home and come back married. Yes, trees from then are now 2x4s. So why bother with such things that should be forgotten? Why let years ago punch me flat? Why, oh, why should these all of a sudden sounds of a nearly lost song spook me? I'll tell you why. Because that tune this morning cried out like a ghost and slipped me right back to when my heart had just barely started. The croon reached out and grabbed me by my shoreleys and kicked me flat on my dammits. Kicked me all the way back to those days when I was full smack in love, like a thrown cursing glass of milk. And the next poem is a love poem. It first appeared in 21st Century Flow. It's titled Clatter. Love me in the very same way that the word unbeknownst sounds in midair. Yes, or just like how spires climb to the very top. And then even beyond, soaks slip or noons drift, and as far as puddles can jump, love to love me like that. And love me as if handshakes were grins, or as when echoes find their tunnel. Love me like those birds that love diving in corners, or just like sunlight is love as it teases the cupboards. Love me in all those ways and more. And with sashes open, love me now, but also then. And as much as when lunch is served, with all of that back and forth and clatter. Yes, love me as surely as cups that will spill. Or then above, with nights excel, when listening turns to dreams. Love me like the swirling din within the word abound. I'll turn the mic over now to T.A. Niles.
Well, thank you, Hiram, for being willing to share this spotlight with me. And thanks to Joan and Erica and everyone behind the scenes at the River Road Reading Series. Wouldn't be happening without you folks. Okay, John, it was a pleasure being introduced to your work as well. I'm sure I'll be checking much of it out in the future. Okay, this next poem first appeared in a new Ulster. It's called Patio. As they look down into the swaddled bundle, these parents and grandparents in an old snapshot seem hushed with time in glossy and magical ways. A door looks to be opening behind them, and a trellis up over them casts shadows like grins. They aren't speaking to each other or looking up towards the camera. They needn't be. They are in awe of the baby. The grandfather especially must realize that the June air is melting away. Because look how the patio has petunias and paper plates floating off. And even a distant train is whistling, all with no focus or edges, only remembered. Some purple martins are surely curling the corners somewhere. So here's the wonder. How does anyone ever stay put, now or then, when everything matters in such long ago pictures, when summer was posed both for spring and fall? I love your work, Hiram, but it gets better every time I read it.
I love hearing you read it.
Okay, the next selection first appeared in Oyster River Pages. It's entitled Conjure. Pretend that there's a tune inside this line. Pretend there's a wide open humming window right here, or a whistle that's weaving in and out of each of these written trees. Those kinds of sounds. Imagine that there's a raindrip background to these words, the springtime kind that must be touched. Yes, with colors humming the page's corners. Imagine that. Or conjure all of this while recalling the swelling of a storm where up and down collide with hay in thundered vistas made of rhyme. With such fields of make in mind or jottings down, imagine if all of this was whimmed away as weeds that hum, as poem cakes, their candles.
Thank you, T.A.
Oh, my pleasure, Hiram, as you know. Thank you. Should I just jump in then with a
Sure,
question? I think
sure.
we
Yes.
are,
So this is
yeah,
a pause here that we're going to take and just visit briefly about the process.
indeed. Switching gears just a little bit. And so Hiram, that last poem that you read, Clatter, made me wonder and made me want to ask you, how do you arrive at a line in a love poem that goes, as far as puddles can jump, and love me as if handshakes were grins, in the context of how one might want to be loved? Please
Uh,
tell us.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you, TA, for bringing your spirit and your voice to the poems. I'm terrifically honored, and I enjoy hearing you read them. I'm always looking, as we write, as I know so many of the poets on this Zoom session are, for surprise, for a little bit of the unexpected, maybe even just a titch of bafflement in poems. That's what jazzes me about poems and poetry in general. And so I try to express what, in some cases, for me at least, is the inexpressible, by asking words to do maybe just a little bit more than they're used to doing, and ears just a little bit, our ears just a little bit more than we're used to using them for. And so I will turn nouns into verbs and adjectives into nouns and the like, with the hope that they may convey just a spark, a titch, as I say, of that wonder, of that surprise, facing the kind of undescribable joys that are about us. I think those joys are especially important in these troubling times. So that's a little bit about where some of these poems are coming from. TA, I'm really interested, and I thought maybe some of the folks on the session might be interested in your process for approaching poems to narrate for an audiobook. Did you have trouble doing that? Was it challenging? Did you enjoy it? I hope you did, but tell us just a little bit about the process that you used.
Certainly, Hiram. Um, Enjoy it would be an understatement. Let me just say that. I would characterize the process as absolutely enriching. It was doing this particular project was one of the very few highlights for me in 2021. And of course, there were challenges. This was my first book of poetry that I've produced. And you have to read Mud Ajar to understand what I went through. So I'm pretty straight-laced as far as language and grammar goes. At least I have been in the past. I'm getting over that, though, these days. And once I got past my linguistic biases, when I encountered, as you just told us, nouns as adjectives and adjectives as verbs and so forth, once I got past that and started delving into the work and had the opportunity to collaborate with you, with Hiram, and thank goodness he was there, ever ready to assist, or else I don't know how well I would have done. But that collaborative process that we went through to produce the audiobook, as I said, was a tremendous highlight for me. And now so many of those poems are actually a part of me. So
Well,
that's my long, short answer.
again, appreciate your willingness and your bravery to take the project on. I can remember calls from TA going, Hiram, what exactly did you mean? So we worked through it. And I think probably the most telling impact and result is that TA Niles is now writing poetry, very powerful poetry, not at all like mine. It's in his own voice, and it's very, very powerful. So kudos to you, TA. So let's continue on. This poem is going to be presented by TA.
Okay, the subject of the next poem is Charlie Arthur Floyd, more popularly known as Pretty Boy Floyd. He was with us from February 3rd, 1904 through October 22nd, 1934, was an American bank robber who operated in the West and Central states. His criminal exploits got plenty of press coverage, and made him famous in the 1930s. Poems called Pretty Boy Floyd. Erase everything that you may know about him, his place of birth or age, or even how he died in a spray of bullets. Ignore all of that. It makes no difference. He hardly made a difference, except, my goodness, his name. No matter what you may think about him, there's his nickname. Somehow, it brings to mind farmers, especially beet or wheat farmers in bowls of dust, farmers that shook their heads at that name or wiped their noses and grinned. A name so outside the Midwest and yet so inside it, a blue ribbon jar of pickles or chrome fenders. Floyd, meaning an uncle or post office clerk, but also pretty boy, meaning a curl of cigarette smoke or cream-colored suspenders, or even a French postcard. Nothing that went wrong with him counts much now. But just like with Bonnie Prince Charles, we want to see his picture anyway. And when we finally do, framed in a very different world, we whisper, good gracious, to ourselves. Just love it. Okay. The following poem first appeared in Thieving Magpie. And I must say, this was one of the first that I read, and I was going, huh, really? Okay. And then now it's one of my favorite poems. Okay, so it's called In Waiting. When I speak twig, above me, the sounds are unimaginable. Each swollen bud laces its shoes, and those earwigs, their pinches, squeak out to my growing gold days. They grab my damp hearts in waiting. And when I see such tremendous shake-salting importance on bird tails, or feel a will that won't, that matters, it's then from roofs atop me that sudden notions wing me towards how to live. When I turn into twigs now, my sap dives deeper, and the claps clap louder up in those winking drip song wisely eaves. Woo.
Thank you, TA, so
Ah,
much. So this next piece, again, thank you, TA, so much for being here, for bringing your voice, your spirit, and your willingness, and as I said, bravery. I really appreciate that. This next piece appeared first in an online journal called Vox Poetica, and I read it very lovingly in a different voice. And my apologies to those of you who may have heard it before. It's titled Smart Dumb. She was born inside out, the size of a heavy orange. And the story goes that she was wobbly from the very start. Even as a little girl, she was so smart and so damn dumb together. That's the way sometimes. Well, wouldn't you know it? Dead solved the problem. The full story isn't important, but what is that at about 19 or so, she fell jaw drop in love with someone who just wouldn't, couldn't, and didn't. Someone like too close to a fire. Yes, with those kind of eyes. And the thing was, there was no warm in her at all, not any. And oh my goodness, the rumors were rich enough to live on. But here's the thing, really. She ended up like a tree toppled over with all the roots up in the air. Hers was a big sideways life that just never really got started. And of course, she's gone now, but is wholly famous. That's what starting out with too many wants will do in an all or nothing sort of way. So the lingering question is this: is it truly best to leave nature alone or invite it in for a chat over dinner? And this last piece is titled As Where I Love. And kind of imagine stepping out onto a front porch, looking up, being visited by a good friend and the like. As where I love. Who takes anywhere, my love, along, or sallies forth to there and sees your ways as much as where I love? Each rucksack view of hillsides. On these roads of sand or just arrived as visits from my love or held inside my travels to such new and greetings bend. And then the skies where flies back and forth to love the air like yes and breeze. With every fresh and throwing to that listening leaf, my hiking heart, your compass grin and magic wise, how anywhere may wave to dreams or know to stay, my love, and then begin again in rustled time, out towards where your whistling ways, my love, with birds this keen. Thanks very much, everyone. Here is T.A. Niles. He's a narrator of the audio book. And here is the cover again with my email and my website. Thanks so much, Joan and Erica. Really appreciate it.